The tattered silhouette of Detective Nate O'Brien hunched over his worn mahogany desk. A tableau of countless late nights drowned in the ambivalent glow of a single lamp. Sallow cheekbones carved deep shadows into his weathered visage, testament to decades spent on thankless streets under Minnesota's unforgiving skies. Nate's gray eyes, etched with a ferocious persistence, scanned over an array of files littering the desk, each a cryptic tale of smuggling anchored to a bizarre locale. The ancient, brooding edifice of the local mental asylum, Raven's End. Brooklyn Park was a place of simple people and simpler lives, punctuated by the unsettling anomaly of the asylum. Nate himself was an anomaly, a beacon of resilience born from a harrowing past, his skin embroidered with faded scars, souvenirs from a childhood painted in shades of abuse. As he walked the familiar path to the precinct, he'd often stop by the desolate corner under the Elm Street Bridge, where he'd find old Bill, a homeless war vet. "Morning, Bill," he'd greet, pressing a steaming cup of joe into the man's trembling hands. Compassion, blooming from the ashes of his own traumas, formed the lifeblood of his being. One late evening, after an arduous day of inquiries, he visited a watering hole, the Jaded Lantern. A familiar face greeted him, Rita, the red-haired bartender. A roguish grin split her freckled face as she slid his usual a tumbler of aged whiskey across the polished counter. "Hard day, Nate?" she probed, her perceptive gaze reflecting the dancing amber of the whiskey. He merely raised his glass in tacit acknowledgement, his eyes bearing a storm that words seldom could express. Their conversation was a slow dance of spoken and unspoken words, the dialogue woven with comforting familiarity. "Remember, not all battles are meant to be fought alone, Nate," Rita murmured, a note of worry coloring her tone. Nate grunted in response, his gaze fixed on the bottom of his empty glass, where he often searched for unspoken truths. The following day saw him at the imposing gates of Raven's End. The asylum, a hulking specter, rose from the snow-clad earth, its cold stones whispering tales of the forgotten. He squared his shoulders, girding himself against the chill that had nothing to do with the biting wind. As he approached the asylum, he paused to study its gnarled facade. The creeping ivy was like a desperate green hand clutching the building's stone face, as though seeking solace from the oppressive gloom. An unsettling hush pervaded the grounds, making his decision all the more unnerving. He pushed open the ancient gate, its iron-wrought form creaking in resistance, as though begrudging his intrusion into the asylum's dread secrets. The chapter closes with his boots echoing in the silent courtyard, his determined stride casting long shadows that hinted at the precipice of a journey, an ominous descent into the murky underbelly of Raven's End. The iron gates of Raven's End swung shut behind Nate, the timbre of the groaning hinges reverberating through the frozen air. He was but a speck against the backdrop of the monolithic structure, its weathered stones standing as silent sentinels of buried secrets. Within the asylum's belly, a grim symphony of hushed whispers and distant mournful cries painted a haunting tapestry. The air, heavy with a palpable despair, tasted metallic, like an echo of old dried blood. A familiar anxiety, one he recognized from his brutal childhood, danced at the edges of his consciousness. He held it at bay, channeling his fear into a hard kernel of resolve. He had ventured into the lion's den, and he would not be found wanting. His exploration led him to the asylum's matron, a wiry woman with pallid skin and watery eyes named Mrs. Haversham. A web of wrinkles etched into her skin seemed to mirror the labyrinthine corridors of Raven's End. "I've never seen any smuggling here, Detective," she droned, her voice a stale, colorless echo against the dank walls. The words hung in the air, their credibility as fragile as the peeling wallpaper. Flickering beneath her denial was an edge of fear, a half-hidden veil that stirred his curiosity. He leaned in, pressing further, his questions probing the crevices of her deflections. His insistence led to an admission of an oddity, a patient by the name of Jonah. Jonah was a man of glassy-eyed muteness and a sordid past smeared with smuggling charges. Nate found him in the depths of the asylum, locked in a padded cell, his body curled into a human knot. A cold shiver ran down his spine as he met Jonah's distant, light-devoid gaze. Their dialogue was not of words but of loaded silences, pregnant with unsaid secrets. Jonah's lips moved in a frenzied whisper, a mantra repeated again and again. Nightly windows to other worlds. Nate's dismissal of the man's cryptic utterings was not immediate. Jonah's words echoed in the cavernous recesses of his mind, blending with the ghostly cries of the asylum into an eerie, discordant melody. Late that night, in the asylum's underbelly, Nate stumbled upon an eerie chamber obscured by an illusion of a masonry wall. Inside lay strange symbols, carved with an almost reverent precision into the cold stone, and an assortment of cryptic artifacts bathed in the meager light of a dying candle. A sudden chill, more profound than the wintry air outside, crept under his skin. The room vibrated with an otherworldly energy, an echo of something beyond the realm of his understanding. The strange symbols seemed to dance in the dim light, casting grotesque shadows that hinted at forms not of this world. He emerged from the chamber, his mind a whirlwind of unanswered questions. His gaze swept over Raven's End one last time, seeing it not as a mere asylum, but as a nexus of unseen realities. Unbeknownst to him, the threshold to those realities had begun to quiver, poised to swing open, leading into the next terrifying chapter of his investigation. Raven's End, a mausoleum of insanity, now bore an added weight in Nate's psyche, an abyss of the inexplicable, shrouded in an impenetrable murk. Haunting images of the concealed room and its alien symbols saturated his dreams, each a voyage into a disquieting void. Time began to fray at its edges. He would find himself losing hours, sitting in solitude, staring at the eerie sketches he had made of the symbols. The lines of reality seemed to blur, the walls of his apartment breathing in sync with his growing paranoia. His dreams transformed into nightmarish journeys, populated by grotesque figures lurking in the boundaries of perception. There was an ever-present sense of falling, an inexorable descent into a chasm of cosmic proportions. Through this maelstrom, a touchstone of his past emerged, a ghostly visage of his former partner, a strong, jovial man who'd once saved his life only to be consumed by his own mind. A life wasted in the echoing halls of a mental institution, not unlike Raven's End. Remorse filled him, bitter as winter frost. The debt he owed his friend was a sharp pang in his heart, a favor he had yet to return. In the whirl of his current investigation, he felt a strange resonance. Here was a chance to make amends, to help where he had failed before. Driven by this purpose, he returned to Raven's End. His conversations with the staff and patients took on a new urgency, each interaction fraying his previously solid understanding of the world. The mundane horrors of mental illness intermingled with the phantasmal dread emanating from the asylum's hidden depths. He spent an agonizing session with Jonah, each whispered revelation, each haunting claim about the nightly windows, plucking at his sanity. They open into darkness, into light, into another. Jonah breathed, his voice a shattered mirror reflecting 1,000 terrible realities. His reality fractured further when he witnessed an incident, a spectacle that defied comprehension. A flicker of an eerie portal appeared in the asylum's courtyard, the air around it distorting, a bubble of warped reality. He saw a glimpse of an alien landscape, a sky the color of a fresh bruise, stars shimmering like fevered eyes, and spectral entities that eluded the grasp of his comprehension. The portal flickered, blinked, and then was no more. The sight left him trembling, his skepticism crumbling. The normalcy of Brooklyn Park felt like a distant memory, a lullaby before a night of terrifying dreams. He was teetering on the precipice of an abyss, the veil of his understanding torn asunder. A silence fell over Raven's End, pregnant with unspoken dread. It echoed through the labyrinthine hallways, filling the crevices of the ancient asylum. It wasn't the absence of sound, but a malignant hush that whispered of unimaginable horrors yet to unfold. Nate stood before the hidden chamber, a lone warrior preparing to dive headlong into an unfathomable abyss. His heart echoed in his chest, a frantic drummer marching to the tune of impending doom. In an unexpected act of rebellion, the wall concealing the chamber shuddered, a chasm appearing at its center. The air seemed to pulsate with an alien rhythm, unseen tendrils of otherworldly energy curling and uncurling, beckoning him into the grotesque portal. The plunge was less a physical act and more a cataclysm of the mind. His senses were assaulted by landscapes that defied logic, creatures of nightmarish anatomy, and sounds that bore no resemblance to any earthly dialect. He encountered a gargantuan entity, its form a kaleidoscope of constantly shifting dimensions, its voice a tempest of discordant symphonies. Its existence, its mere presence, was an affront to all that he knew, a cosmic monstrosity that sought to unmake his world. "Interloper," it thundered, its voice cascading over Nate like an avalanche. "You stand on the threshold of realms untamed. Go back or succumb to the abyss." But Nate was no stranger to confronting monsters. His past, marred with the tyranny of an abusive father, had taught him that beasts could be met with resolve, with bravery. And so he stood tall, every fiber of his being alight with determination. The fear was still there, but it was eclipsed by a stronger force, the will to protect his world. His encounter with the entity was not a physical struggle, but a battle of wills. It was a chess game with the universe at stake, where courage and wit were his only pieces, and every move was a step into the unknown. Ultimately, he prevailed. He navigated the cosmic labyrinth, outwitted the entity, and made his way back to his reality. He emerged from the portal, collapsing onto the cold stone floor of the hidden chamber. With a final surge of strength, he resealed the wall, trapping the unfathomable horror behind a facade of normality. He exited Raven's End a changed man, the grueling ordeal leaving an indelible mark on his soul. The Brooklyn Park that he returned to felt different, smaller, insubstantial. The familiarity of its streets, its people, felt like an illusion, a distraction from the cosmic mysteries that lurked just beneath the surface. He looked into the mirror that night, his reflection staring back with an alien clarity. His world, his understanding, was irrevocably shattered, replaced by a larger, darker, and infinitely more complex universe. He was no longer merely Nate O'Brien. He was the man who had faced the abyss and lived to tell the tale. Yet within the depths of his haunted gaze, a new understanding lurked, as he now knew the world was far vaster and stranger than anyone could fathom. The only certainty was uncertainty, the only truth, the abyss that gazed back. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like it and subscribe to our channel, where you can find more similar stories, and click on the bell icon to never miss one. There is plenty more cosmic horror to come from the Eldritch Tales Factory. Stay tuned, and until next time.